Hi, everybody, and welcome to Strategic Sorcery for the Financially Stuck, a free class, sort of like the same setup as the arcane audios that I do. It's going to be much shorter than those, but it is going to be free. The rules that I set for the class, I'm getting a key here that people do not have audio. Can everyone hear me? Somebody write in whether you can hear me. Okay, people can hear me. Sorry about that. So anyway, I did have some rules set for this class. The basic rule is that I am not going to reference any product or service that costs more than $20, including my own. And there's a reason for that. There's a lot of things targeted at people that are financially stuck, that are in desperate situations, and they wind up being a segue. It's a free thing that segues into something that you pay for, and that's not what I'm trying to do. So while I will reference things like Financial Sorcery, you can get that on Amazon for like $12, and so things that cost under $20 or around $20 is the limit that I set. So the first thing I want to say is, about a month ago, I asked the folks in the Strategic Sorcery group to, if you're financially stuck, share with me your problems. Share with me the stuff that is holding you back. And a lot of you did, and I wanted to thank you. Because, of course, I have my own experiences being financially stuck when I was younger, and I'm sure I'll be financially stuck at some other point in the future. I hope not, but I am, aware that it may happen. And but everyone's experience is a little bit different. So it was useful getting a view into some other people's lives. And so the first thing that I wanted to say to you, to all of you, is that you are not to blame for your situation. A lot of people will tell you that you are, that you're to blame, that it's the poverty mindset keeps people poor. And there is such a thing as the poverty mindset, but I would argue that it's not what keeps people poor. But you are not to blame. There are forces out there, not only the obvious ones. Obviously, there is privilege, and there is the bad economy, and there are all these other things. But we also have the families that we were born into, the families that we were raised with, the genetics that we inherited that gave us a predisposition one way or the other. We don't get to pick those. Even the stuff, people will point out programs and say, oh, even knowing about those programs is a type of luck. And so you are not to blame for being financially stuck. You are not to blame if you're in poverty. You're not to blame. I think we need to embrace that idea. But here's the downside of that. You are entirely responsible. You're not to blame, but you are entirely responsible, meaning that you have to fix it. It's up to you to fix it. No one else is going to fix it. No one is going to do it for you. So all of the things that may or may not be to blame, it doesn't matter, because it's up to you to fix it. It is your responsibility. You were raised with horrible money habits. You're not to blame for that, but it is your responsibility to fix it. You are experiencing racial bias, gender bias. You are certainly not to blame for that. but it's up to you to overcome those problems. It is your responsibility to deal with the problems that you have. And that's not fair. But that's where we are. That's what it is. It's not fair. So I'm sorry. Why am I starting with this point? I'm starting with this point because people confuse what is good for society, good advice for society, fixing society, and what is good advice for an individual. I'll give you an example. Last summer, there was this Netflix show about Tony Robbins, Not Your Guru, right? And so I was reading some articles critical of Tony Robbins. I kind of like Tony Robbins, and I have some criticisms of Tony Robbins. This idea of liking something and not liking it at the same time is going to be a theme that comes up later in this short talk. But I was reading this one article, and I don't remember where it is, but I saved the quote from it. And it is that doing things, the suggestion in the article was that if you are going to something like this, or if you're attending a talk like this, or if you're really learning to do anything, it, quote, distracts its adherents from their actual material conditions, allowing them to misattribute both success and failure to their juju rather than the intersection of their privileges and oppressions. Now, first of all, I'm not one of those people that's going to sit here and tell you there's no such thing as white privilege, there's no such thing as gender, and I believe that there is. And you can disagree with me, and I don't want to talk about it. But I believe that there is. And I believe that there are oppressions, and I believe that there are infinite oppressions, and I believe that we do not have an equal field of opportunity. But think about this quote. You're attributing your successes and failures to your juju rather than the intersection of privilege and oppression. In other words, the suggestion of this article is that you should attribute your success and your oppression to the intersection of privilege and oppression. You have nothing to do with it, folks. You have no control, which means that you should just give up. If you don't have the right privileges, just give up. This is horseshit. This is good advice for fixing society. This is good advice if we're considering legislation to deal with poverty and things like this. Then I think it's realistic to look at people and say, okay, well, telling people to just hold themselves up by their bootstraps is not really a solution. However, for the individual, you have to take responsibility. If you want to change your life, you have to take responsibility. You have to say, well, in reality, my situation is determined both by my juju, aka and I love that they would use the word juju for this since we're talking about magic, and this intersection of privilege and oppression, aka outside factors that I can't control. I've got what I can control. I've got what I can't control. Where do you think you should be focusing? Right, on what you can control. You take these things you can't control and you set them aside. It's not that they're not real. It's not that they're not holding you back. It's not that they're not knocking you down on your ass. But if you can't do anything about it, it is not a problem. If it's not actionable, it's not a problem. And it's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is this. So my recommendation is to actually take full responsibility for everything. Even if you are not to blame, you take responsibility. The buck stops here. May not be my fault, but I'm the one that's going to deal with it. Because if you don't deal with it, no one else gives a shit enough to deal with it. And that's the truth. No one else is going to do it. And so that's the first lesson. Blame and responsibility. Separate advice for society versus advice for the individual. And right now, I see a lot of people getting hung up and torn up and turned around over this. And it's messing with you as far as going forward in your own life. Next up, the ideal world versus the actual world. This is similar, but separate them again. We all have a way that we would like things to work, right? They don't work that way. I remember, 5 years ago now, I wrote something about the power of the necktie, and people took deep offense that, I hate wearing a necktie. I don't want to wear a necktie. This is horrible. And to them, I say, okay, well, that's fine. But if you work in certain industries, that is what is expected of you. And when it comes down to laying somebody off, you might do a better job than the next guy. But if you look like a bum, you're going to get the axe. But that's not fair. Yep, it's not. But that's the reality that you're dealing with. Listen, we're magical people, right? We believe in this thing called sorcery, right? We're already one step outside. We're one step into the woo-woo. Don't go anymore. Don't anchor yourself in fantasy. If you want to work to make the world a better place, great. Do it after you're stuck. Because when I say financially stuck, I mean in an emergency. You're having an emergency. You are by definition in crisis. We're not talking about going from hand to mouth and then bettering yourself from there. Those are classes that I charge for. This is I don't have hand to mouth. or I do right now, but I'm going to lose it shortly. You're in crisis. You worry, you handle the societal stuff later. So that's another separation. Separate the ideal world with the factual world. Last thing I want you guys to separate. These are the 3 separations. Separate advice for society for advice for the individual. Separate the ideal world from the actual world. You always have to deal with the actual world. Separate blame and responsibility. So, 4 really. And then finally, separate happiness from fulfillment. This is a big one. And it's a big one because most of you, if you are truly financially stuck, are going to have to work your ass off, even with the magic. It's going to be hard. When I started Strategic Sorcery, when I started writing, I had left a job in the .bomb, a good career in voiceover IP. And I started working for my family business, which was failing, and I tried to help turn it around with some success, enough to sell it. And then as I focused more and more and more on my career, doing this for a living, my day jobs got progressively less glamorous, right? Because I'm putting less and less energy into them, and I'm probably sitting at my terminal, and actually doing this when I should be, travel agenting or whatever it was I was doing. There was quite a few things in there. And this was also right around the time that my kids were born. So literally, every day was a grind. It was a grind of dealing with twins that were babies, dealing with a full-time job, dealing with getting a business off the ground, because that was the glimmer of hope. That was the how do you escape this, right? The business. And dealing with, just the trials and tribulations of everyday life. It just kept going. It was nonstop. It was very little sleep. You add to this in a year or two later, and my wife got cancer. And I had to cancel all my live appearances and stuff. So I worked harder than I ever worked in my entire life. And I let go of a lot of things that made me happy. A lot of shows, a lot of games, a lot of going out with friends. I got distant with most of my close friends, except for one. Matthew Brownlee is seeing this. Thank you, buddy. But, I became fulfilled. I let go of that happiness. So every now and then you're going to see something out there. You'll see these articles like, leather jackets and sex make you happier than children. And they do. At any given moment, if you were to present me with a nice leather jacket and the opportunity for sex versus making my kids do their homework, I would be like, that, I'll take it. But overall, fulfillment-wise, the busting your ass, the fixing the problem, the moving forward is going to fulfill you in a way that this other thing is not. Separate happiness from fulfillment, because to fix your problems, you're going to be doing magic that, if it works, will create massive amounts of work for you. And I've met people who don't want to start their career because it interrupts their karate, their martial arts training. Are they planning on teaching martial arts? No, not really. They just like it. Are they going to be fighting for their life anytime soon? No, it's their thing. They love it. And so they're forestalling their career in graphic design because they won't be able to go to the dojo 5 times a week. Or, they would work harder on, I'll have a consultation with somebody and I'll start the conversation talking about some of the things that I know they do that take up a ridiculous amount of time. And then I'll start talking in the consultations about, well, maybe these are some things you could do to turn your life around. They're like, I don't have the time for that. Like, really? So separate these two things out from one another. So now let's focus. Let's talk magic. We've talked setup, right? Let's talk magic. You might be expecting me to be like, this is the magic thing for people that are stuck. This is the magic pill. This is the ritual. This is the spirit. And actually, if you're attending the class live, then you're already my student. So you're not expecting that. If you're not, because this is going to be made publicly available, then you might be expecting that. But that's not what I'm going to give, because another thing you need to let go of is the idea that there's magic. There is no magic. What is magic? Magic is the one piece of magic that will suddenly make everything better. People sometimes think they find the one piece of magic. So for instance, years ago, I was helping somebody find work, and they were telling, they tried this deity and this deity and this spirit and this ritual, this mojo bag and this candle, and nothing has really worked. And I said, let me see your resume. And I go through their resume, and I was like, this has got to be one of the shittiest resumes I've ever seen, not to be blunt. And so I fix up the resume, and I say, pick one thing now, one spell to focus on, one spirit to focus on. start sending this resume out and now that it looks decent. And also, start focusing on, we shifted where their attention was focusing in the job market. And lo and behold, very shortly thereafter, they got a job. Their immediate response was, that was it. That was it. Helios was the one. That was the one deity that would do it. Yay, Helios. No. In fact, probably you had all this other mojo building up from all this other work you did going, we're really trying, but your resume sucks and you're not presenting yourself well. And, generally you're unhireable. And the reason that is because magic is an influence. It is not a cause. The definition of magic that most of us use is magic is, the causes change in conformity with will, or one of the many, many variations on that. And everybody changes something, or they add something, or they spin it somehow. Magic is change in consciousness if you're Dion Fortune. Magic is change in accordance with will using methods not understood by science if you're Don Michael Craig. And those are fine. What I change is actually the word cause. I go to the root definition. I say magic is influence in accordance with will. And this changes how the game is played. Because you are no longer doing magic and just being like, give me some money, boo, cast a spell, get me some money. You're influencing things, right? You are adding an influence, which means if you're adding your influence to something that might happen, you can have some good success. If you're adding your influence to something that is really improbable, then it's not going to work. It's got to be near probability. It's got to be closer. I hear people talk about things when they tell me they're financially trapped, and they have ideas of just like, well, I've been working on this group of short stories. So my plan to get my family out of abject poverty is to publish my book of short stories. Guess what? Market for short stories, not very good. If it was very good, your chance of getting published in such a way that would actually pay bills, not very good. If this was your passion, if this was your live it and breathe it thing, you would have already had stuff out already. But it's improbable. It's so improbable. Same with the lottery. I've talked about this in Financial Sorcery. You don't pin your hopes on the lottery. You don't pin your hopes on these kinds of, really highly improbable things. Make a plan that will work without magic, and then use magic to make sure it works. It's really kind of as simple as that. You've got to aim your magic at better things. That's it. Recently, I was reading somebody's Facebook. They're a reasonably popular, spiritual worker, and I believe a very capable spiritual worker. But they had written, hey, if the spirits could stop throwing me, $20, then that would be great. Yeah, don't accept $20 from the spirits. You got to tell them you stop aiming at money drawing. Stop the money drawing. Money drawing magic is for like a real emergency. Like, I don't have money for rent this month, so I'm going to draw money. If you're constantly, if you're doing money drawing magic on a regular basis, then you are setting yourself up for failure. You're engaging in a cycle that is unhealthy, because you are by definition not making it in this life financially, because you always need magic to just bring you money from out of freaking nowhere. And that's not what magic is good at. Yes, it occasionally happens. Yes, I have done it and gotten, invited to participate in a focus group that gave me the exact amount needed. Stuff like that. But that's not financial sorcery. That's money magic. That's money mojo. And if your money mojo is fine, if you need it right now and you have a plan to get yourself out, pay the rent and then start doing it for better income. You have to enchant for better income. You have to have something that is movable. So if you work for the state and you enchant for better income, but you're not due for a promotion anytime soon, and it's you have to be in this position for X amount of years, there again, the state is not suddenly going to rewrite their rules because you lit a candle. So this is where we need to steer our magic away from the improbable. We need to steer our magic away from the momentary fixes, and we need to start getting into the income streams. Now, a lot has been said about how to make money, and we could be here all day. So here's the next thing about magic, all right? We all become what we study. We all become what we study. We all become what we learn about. And so most of us are interested in magic and we learn about magic. But you have to be interested in money. So if you're only reading about magic, and frankly, if you're only books about money and jobs and wealth and so on are by magicians like myself or Gordon White or something like that, then you're doing yourself a disservice. You need to actively engage in those worlds. You need to get interested in money. A lot of people who are financially stuck that I've talked to over the years, a lot of you in this group will say, ultimately, I'm not really interested in money. On the one hand, yes, you haven't put any interest into learning about or mastering money. On the other hand, you're wrong because you're working 8 hours a day, or you're desperately trying to get into a situation where you're working 8 hours a day for money. So you are interested. When it's not there, you're interested. You're interested in making it. Just take that interest and get better at it. How do you do this? Well, information income. One thing across the board, when I talk to magicians, witches, sorcerers, sorceresses that are kind of living la vida broca, they don't know anything about money. They don't read about it. They don't read about, one person who has habitually been fired from job after job after job. I did a free spell for them, but I also said, you need to buy The Rules of Work by Richard Templar. And the reason is that this is a great little guide to basically just how to present yourself at work, how to be, a good employee and not get fired, and to progress in the company. It was helpful to me at an early age. It's not helpful to everyone. But for this person, it was the shot in the arm. And now they started to excel. Somebody else in this group many, many years ago, completely broke. And I had suggested a book called You're Broke Because You Want to Be by Larry Winget. And they grabbed it and they used it. And, they've done very well for yourself. The 4-hour Workweek was one of my big, kind of epiphanies. I read that at a Pizza Hut, and I wrote, by the end of it, I had napkins full of how I'm going to start a business. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was one that I remember both Josh and I, Frater R.O. and I were reading it at the same time, and we would talk on the phone about it a little bit. Not so much full of useful information, but it was a good money reframe. And I actually recently re-listened to it because a friend of mine also re-listened to it. And that friend of mine makes, well into 7 figures doing real estate. So, all these books, I can almost hear some of you rolling your eyes like, self-help books, blah, 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 garbage. And I used to think that too, except during one of my rough patch jobs, I used to install blinds in people's homes, high-end blinds in rich folks' homes, second homes actually. And I'd see these books all over the place for these people that are doing rather well. And like I said, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, for all of its problems, recommended to me as a reread by a friend of mine who is quite successful. And that's the other thing about all these books. Every single one of these books that I've recommended, and every one that everyone will ever recommend to you, has problems. They all have problems. You can pick any of them apart. And if you're a person who loves reading stuff where you're picking those smart guys apart, where just, take them down a peg, then you're not going to benefit. It's just that simple, because you're going to read it and you're like, well, Jason recommended this, but then I found this article by this guy who was really cool and snarky, and he told me why it's a waste of time. And I used to be that person, and I used to dig into these things or avoid them, because I would see people who picked it apart, and I'm like, oh, well, I guess it really is garbage. Until I actually, started to reframe myself. So every single book, every piece of advice, every program that you will take, including this very one, has its problems. And even more than that, it has advice that may not be applicable in your situation. I remember, when I recommended the 4-hour Workweek to somebody, they got angry with me, and they read it, and they came up to me and they were like, there's a chapter in there about how to quit your job or how to get your job to make you work at home. And I work retail. Obviously I can't work at home. What the hell? And I'm like, okay, but the rest of this book, what did you think? And he's like, well, there's some interesting things in there, but this really just picked me off because, this person, I can't possibly do. Okay, that's not advice for you. I was talking on Facebook a few months ago. I said, maybe investing in volatility funds right now is a good idea, and then we can use the money from the volatility funds to make the world less volatile. And somebody was like, just chimed in and was like, I don't have any money to invest. I'm like, that's not advice for you then, man. I don't know what to tell you. And that's, it sounds snotty, but this is the thing. You look for the good advice, and you look for the advice that is challenging. Obviously, if it's not applicable to you, then you don't do it. But then you look at the advice that is challenging. What does this have to do with magic? Why is this in the magic section? Because if you start to reframe yourself, if you start to feed this stuff to yourself as part of your diet, if you learn how money works, if you learn how employment works, how jobs work, et cetera, the magic will move with it. It really will. The magic that you're already doing, the mojo. I don't really want to teach you something new magically, because you're in crisis. In crisis is not the time to be like, okay, let me learn a brand new system of magic. Now is the time to use the magic that you know, and most of you know plenty of magic, but to use it for smart things and to do it in good ways. And I'm telling you that you're changing your information diet will itself have a magical effect. It will itself get Tzadkiel to come down and deliver to you the kinds of changes that you're really looking for. Life changes, not just, a hit for $60 that you found in the street. This is how this kind of thing, gets done. The next thing I wanted to talk about was when you are in crisis, when you are financially stuck, you have to work extra hard not to be a victim. That is the reason why I set the rules for the class, that I don't recommend anything that costs over $20. If to learn more, check out, none of that. You have to work hard not to be a victim. So for instance, right now, I can bet money that people over the next couple days that listen to it, there will at least be a few people enrolled in massage therapy courses and a few people enrolled in medical coding courses and stuff like that. And it's not that there are no successful massage therapists. It's not that there's no one making good living as a medical coder. However, these schools are aggressively marketed to people who are lost, to people who don't know what to do next. And so they say things like, hey, earn money by helping people, no experience or training required, get certified in 30 days, make a full-time income with no experience, potential of $20 to $40 an hour. These are actually pulled from these ads. And here's the thing. If you don't have a passion for these things, if you don't really want to, first, you're not going to succeed at them. Especially with massage therapy. I mean, God, there could be nothing that I would consider more of a hassle than having to go and massage people if I hated massaging. That would just drive me, absolutely bonkers. So we definitely, we definitely don't want to do that. Somebody unmuted them. There we go. Mute them. And the medical coding thing too. They're promising, you will work from home. You'll work from home. Some of you have kids. Some of you, have elderly adults. Some of you have medical problems. And the idea of working from home sounds great, except there are actually not that many people who are trained in medical coding and billing that work from home. The ones that do start their own businesses and work like hell. People that sell you systems, Febeku commented on this in a group the other day, and I'm going to reiterate it because I've made this point myself a few times. It's hard. There's no such thing as an easy way. It's hard. So, you just gotta, it's not easy. It's hard and it should be hard. Don't take the easy way out. If you're floundering, then when somebody comes to you and says, I would like to talk to you about a great opportunity that you can take advantage of right in your own home by selling your friends things that they need, you're talking to somebody who's about to launch a pyramid scam on you, the Shackley Amway kind of thing, the multi-level marketing. And again, somebody will reply to this course when I post it, but I do multi-level marketing and I make money at it and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'll talk to them, and if they reveal how much money they make, it's going to be like a little side income, and they just started. And then if I check back in 6 months, they make nothing because they've already sold their friends all the vitamins and water filters that they can possibly handle. And they've lost some friends in this. So, avoid aggressively marketed schemes. Don't do magic for those. Do magic for something you want to do. Do magic. You are, just because you are financially stuck, just because you are in your 30s and you haven't gone to college yet, it doesn't mean that you have to give up on doing something that you want to do. Just because you have kids now and it's harder does not mean you have to give up on doing what you want to do with your life. In fact, one of the things that drove me to get serious about my own business was when I had kids. I said, well, I either have to give this up and get a really much better paying corporate gig, or I can say to my children, you know what? It's not that I didn't do this. I couldn't live my dream because I had you kids. I can now look at them and say, I did this because I had you kids and I wanted to show you it was possible. But you're going to have to enchant for smart things. You're going to have to make a plan that will work without magic. And then you're going to have to enchant it. And then you're going to find yourself buried in work. You're going to have to find yourself buried in work and doing hard things for a period of time, not forever. You're going to work in a way that others won't, so that eventually you will live in a way that, people couldn't, the way you were living before. Some people are on assistance. And in America here, we have welfare to work, which sounds great, but it kind of sucks, because what they do is they push people into quick training courses, a la the aggressively marketed ones I just mentioned, that pay very little. And it's really hard to take care of your kids, work a minimum wage job so that you can still get your public assistance, when in fact you need to be training for a high skill or a medium skill job. Wisconsin has a great program, the WRTP, the Wisconsin Regional Training Partnership, where they train people to do machinist jobs, forklift jobs, medium skill jobs, jobs that do not require college degrees, but require meaningful training. And it's very successful, but unfortunately they don't get people that are on welfare, because welfare won't consider those trainings that can sometimes take 6 months to do. All right. So what else did I want to cover? You have to look at your state or your country to see what they have available in the way of assistance. If you're unemployed, did you get laid off? Great. In New Jersey, we have these one-stop places where you can go and talk to career counselors, and they will occasionally pay. In those cases, because you're not on welfare, they will occasionally pay for these medium skill trainings that you can actually get a meaningful career out of. If not, then, you can start your own business as a side income or as a full-time income. It's not easy. Don't listen to people that say that it's easy. Don't listen to the guy that sells magic courses and he's sitting in the hot tub going, I made money overnight, woke up. And you know what? It's true. I'll wake up in the morning and PayPal is there and I'm like, oh, great. That's wonderful. But then I'm working my ass off in the middle of the day and no PayPal's coming in. It doesn't mean anything that you get paid while you sleep. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, don't fall for the suckers, and don't go for the low-hanging fruit. Why don't we go for the low-hanging fruit if we're in crisis mode? Because we stay in crisis mode with low-hanging fruit. You've got to take the time and the effort, and sometimes the deep, painful sacrifice to go for the higher hanging fruit, where it's either a skilled job that you think you might be able to do and make a career, or the thing that you really love to do in life, and that you'll make a living, but doing what you love is going to make you super happy, or both. One is a side, one is a main. You don't go for the low-hanging fruit, because those keep you in the cycle of poverty. You've got to make a plan, and you've got to activate that plan. You've got to do the big spell, what I call macro enchantment here in strategic sorcery. Everybody knows we macro enchant, that we do the spell to start a new career, the spell to get this job or this promotion or whatever it is, the spell to get out of debt. And then we do the micro enchantments, the small spells, the spell on the resume, and then the spell that we bring to the job interview, or the spell that we do on our credit cards that we're cutting up, the spell that we're doing to constrain our expenses, these kinds of things, the micro enchantments, because we have to go step by step. It's the plan that will work without magic. You use magic to make sure that it works, and it works better. So when I said big sacrifices before, this is where a lot of people that wrote in, wrote in with situations that are exceptionally difficult. And I think trivializing those situations is something that a lot of people who give a talk like I'm trying to give now want to do. Like, just do it, just go out. Hey, it's no big deal. And it is a big deal. It's huge, because what this means for some of you is, like busting through the pain, with your lower back pain. Because you're on disability, and if you make more than a certain amount of money, then you're off disability, but it's not really enough money to progress yourself further. So you've got to do this insane sacrifice where you decide, okay, for this year and next year, I'm just going to go forward in my job and forget the disability, and just knuckle it through and hopefully get better doctors. And then there are people who are in an area of the country where there's just no work. There's just nothing. There's no opportunity. But you've got kids there, and maybe you're divorced, and your wife or your husband lives there, and they don't want to move. And so if you move, then you're seeing your kids a few times a year instead of a few times a week. And this is something that would be heartbreakingly painful. So I don't want to trivialize these things. They're super important, and there are sacrifices. But you have to weigh it. You have to say, well, if I'm in one of these catch-22 situations where if I do this, I suffer this way, and if I do this, I suffer this way, so I'm not doing anything, you still have to look at what the price of not doing anything is. The price of staying the course and being this broke or this lost when I'm 40, when I'm 50, when I'm 60, when I'm 70. 70 probably seems like a long way away for some of you. But guess what? If you are under 30 years old, when you're 70, you may have the whole life you've lived right now still ahead of you. So you've got to play the long game. And, I gave a friend heartbreaking advice recently, which was that, maybe, a year or two, or seeing the kids less, or to become the man that you want to be, who your kids will look up to, is the way to go. And I'm not telling you yes or no. I'm not going to tell you to do one thing and not the other. I'm going to say how to weigh these options and then use magic to go forward. What do I do if what do I do if I don't know what I want to do? There are a lot of people, there's this idea that find your passion and then do that and go out and do it. That doesn't really work for everybody. In fact, I would say that works for very few people. And I'm very lucky in that I found my passion super early in life, but it was also a passion that the world told me was impossible to monetize. And so I just didn't even try for years, for most of my life. But you have to have this bias to action. You have to get in there and do stuff and open opportunities. So to borrow a piece of advice from Gordon White, I don't think road opening is the only magic that you need, but when you don't know what you want to do, there's that They Might Be Giants song. Now life's over, I'm dead, and I haven't done anything that I want, or I'm still alive, there's nothing I want to do. If you're in that situation, then road opening is great. Road opening magic. Just like you can do magic to get a promotion, you can do magic to present opportunities, to get things presented to you, to have things, avenues open, to open your roads. These are the problems that people face. Another one is prison. People that have been to prison. It super sucks that we have essentially made it impossible for you to get a regular job, and we have made it really, really, really difficult to become a functional member of society, which of course leads right back to prison for a lot of people. But if you want to avoid that, this is one of those few cases where I would say consider starting your own business, doing something, anything, because there is if your business requires a loan, then you might get turned down for a loan, but at least no one is hiring you or firing you. You're starting your own thing. Ergo, there's no one to say, I'm sorry, you did time, we don't want you. Couple other things, and then I'm going to open it up to questions. Medical problems. This is another huge obstacle. Your magic in this case has to be aimed at not healings, okay? So there are a lot of you guys out there that are having work troubles and financial troubles because of medical troubles. And I remember talking to somebody a couple of years ago, and they had a very serious depression, which to me is bodily. It's not, just because it's your brain doesn't mean that you don't need to treat it in the same way that you would treat, fibromyalgia or something. And I'm like, well, so what are you doing? And he's like, oh, well, I get Reiki, and I go, and I've done vortex healing, and I take aromatherapy, and then I do these, kind of herbal supplements and things like this. I said, yes, yeah. Have you seen a doctor? No, I don't like the medical establishment. And I read that, if you take an anti-anxiety pill, it'll just rob you of all your creativity. And I'm like, yeah, you've been lost and you've been spinning your wheels now for years. I wouldn't worry about losing your creativity right now. And so, with some duress, I said, listen, you can always stop. You can always go off. He did eventually go see a medical professional, and he did eventually take sort of the regular, the antidepressants, and did the journey and the work it takes to get the right ones, and turned his life around. So huge kudos there, because not everyone does that. People become their problems, which we'll talk about at the end. So anyway, do magic not only to heal yourself of your affliction, but also to be brought to the right doctor and the right solution. Earlier today, somebody had written an article. I think it's on Disinfo. I think it's Jason, not me, other Jason. Wrote an article on Disinfo about misdiagnosis. So again, it's not go see a regular doctor and trust the doctor to work you out. No, you have to have, you have to have your agency intact and say, yes, no, doctor, I don't want that. That doesn't sound right to me. And you've got to explain why. But, do magic to get you to the right doctors and the right solutions. A lot of people I have spoken to have they're taking advice that they don't have a diagnosis. They just keep getting treated. You do magic to find the diagnosis, not for the magical removal. Yes, you do magic for the magical removal too, but one of the things when I do healing work for people that most often happens is a change of doctor. And so this is one of those things. The other thing I want to talk about as far as the magic itself goes is it doesn't have to be a money deity. It doesn't have to be a wealth deity. It doesn't have to be any particular spirit. The spirits that you are already working with, that you already have relationships with, are the spirits who can most help you. They are there. They are ready to help you. If you don't have relationships with spirits, then start making offerings. Start making just simple offerings of incense and water outside in the mornings, so that you are, developing a relationship with the local spirits. They can sometimes be more helpful to you than any demon. The local beings of the town, the land. I've written about this elsewhere, but it's very simple to do, to make an offering of water or wine or coffee to the ground, air and incense to the sky, and get the universe on your side a little bit, and ask them for help. It doesn't have to be Jupiter. It doesn't have to be, Tzadkiel. It doesn't have to be Saint Homobonus. Everyone can weigh in on these. Some of the best financial advice I've ever gotten is from Saint Cyprian here. Some of the best financial actions I've ever taken have been with Purba to remove obstacles. These are not things typically associated with money working. So rely upon what you have, assess the skills that you have, assess the opportunities that you have, and design a plan for your life that inspires you to action. First of all, it's not like, oh, I guess I better go, work at the local restaurant and, sling burgers because I'm financially stuck. So that's the big thing. That's the last thing. I think I'm going to close on that. you are experiencing a period of being financially stuck. You are not a financially stuck person. Our problems that we are having are not our story. They are not our life story, unless we let them. And for a lot of people, they let it. They identify with their problems. They identify with being somebody who has these issues. I talk about this in Financial Sorcery, which costs less than $20, so I can recommend it. Where people, we think that rich people identify with their money, right? And to some extent they do. But let me tell you, I have met just as many, if not more, poor people who self-identify as poor. Like, I am this. Why do you think these politicians are always like, I come from poor stock. I come from self-starting men who had to walk uphill both ways and shovel, 16 tons of manure throughout the day. Everybody wants to sound like they're from a Tennessee Ernie Ford song. And when we identify, I'm not like those rich people, those money. I have met people, seriously, in financial crisis that are like, oh, well, I want to do better than I am, but I don't want to make like six figures because I couldn't live with myself if I'm making six figures. I'm like, what? First of all, in New Jersey, six figures is like lower middle class. But, like what? You're already putting like you can't rub two nickels together, but you're already putting a ceiling cap on yourself. You got to get better with money. You've got to not identify yourself with being poor like it's a badge of honor. Because then the spirits will recognize this. The magic recognizes this. The power that flows through you gets patterned by this. And you're then unable to break out of these patterns. So you've got to break out of them. Your problems are not your story. There is always hope, and there is always someplace better to go. And you have to persist. You have to keep going. One of my favorite quotes, a quote that I actually have laminated onto my desk, is nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not, genius will not. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. The slogan, press on, has solved and always will solve the problems of the human race. That is by our 30th president, Calvin Coolidge, born on the 4th of July here in Vermont, who is, he is called the do-nothing president. I like to think of him as the most Zen president. But anyway, this idea of persistence, it really is true. You don't give up. You keep trying new things. And that's the key, trying new things. Persistence at the same things or persistence at dumb things is not going to get you there. If you're completely broke and you live in a rural area and you think opening an occult store is the way to get you not broke, then you're aiming your magic at a dumb thing. That sounds really arrogant, but unfortunately, I've been proven right over and over and over and over again. If you have a great idea, if you're going to move to an area that needs that, then it's a smart idea. But if it's just like, well, I like occultism and I like, the woods, so I'm going to open up an occult store in the middle of the woods. Sounds ridiculous, but I have heard this. This is a real life example. The short story book, not going to do it. So I hate to say, don't aim it at dumb things, but yeah, don't aim it at dumb things. So lastly, why did I do this class? a couple people thanked me for doing this class. And then one person asked why if I'm not trying to get people to join my courses and things like that, why if I'm not going to have a lead in to other things, am I doing a free class? Is it just because I am altruistic and nice? I like to think of myself as altruistic and nice, but actually I am doing this class because I do in fact want people to sign up for courses. But I don't want people to sign up for courses because it's going to get them out of poverty and I want their last nickel. I don't. I want people to get themselves out of poverty. I want to give some tools that I have used, framing more than anything else, framing for the magic you're already doing. More than anything else is what I wanted to deliver in this class. And I wanted to give that because you can get yourself out of financial crisis, out of being stuck. And then I'll sell you on stuff. So because I'm doing it because I believe in this stuff. I have used this stuff. And what's even more important is that people who have taken my course have used this stuff. And they report in with field reports all the time. And if you start taking money seriously, if you realize that you have an interest in it, it's not a matter of getting an interest. It's a matter of realizing you already have an interest in money. And you do it, you take it seriously, you start digesting information in the same way that you digest information about magic and spirits and ancient Kemetic religion and all this stuff. If you just take 30% of that and shift it over to either things that help me do better at my job, or things that help me start a new business, or things that will help me reframe myself and find work, or to get out of the crisis of homelessness or whatever it is. If you take that 30% and if you get rid of the things that make you happy in the moment but don't move you forward at all, for the time being, I'm not saying you can't have happy things, then you will get unstuck. I believe in you and I believe you can do it. So I'm going to go ahead and start the Q&A. I am going to read. I know there's a way to start Q&A process here. Let's see. Chat, manage participants, end meeting. I don't want to end the meeting. Wow, 85 people. Nice. Okay, I don't know how to start a Q&A that way. So type in your question into the group chat, and I will go ahead and do it that way instead. So I have other questions. Let's see. I've got some comments. Someone loves their anti-anxiety meds, changed their life. It's important to note many of the brain drugs have significant withdrawal systems. Absolutely. I'm not recommending any particular treatment for anybody. What I'm recommending is that if you have spent 2 years avoiding sort of what mainstream society suggests as help because you're an alternative person, you're an alternative thinker, you're an alternative medicine person, you're a sorcerer, et cetera, and you define yourself through this lens of being, an alternative medicine person, but you're spinning your wheels for years on end, then maybe entertain the idea that the mainstream knows what it's talking about. Because the most dedicated Reiki practitioner I know, if they broke their leg, they're going to go to the hospital. And it's similar like that. So as with any medical advice, it just, you have to take control. You have to not give up your agency, not let doctors push you around, but at the same time, you have to seek out the best and competent help available. Next up, for those that struggle to get loans, there are new ways of financing. If traditional banking turns it back to you, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, peer-to-peer lending. I don't want to promote anything in particular, but just go out there so you can do your own research. Absolutely. Yes. And an excellent point too. If you're taking this class, you're on the internet. There are some homeless people that I hope take this class and they access the internet maybe through a library or something. You have access to the largest database of knowledge ever accumulated in the history of mankind. Use it. Use it. Go to the places where the people are not already like you. This is another thing. We all like to identify with people, right? We all like to hang out with people that are like us. But if we want to be different and we recognize that everyone we surround ourselves in deeply affects our thought process, our personality, and everything else, then we have to start hanging out with other people. We have to start going places where people that are not like us and in our situation will go. Networking with people who have similar problems is very affirming, but connecting with people who have conquered those problems is perhaps even more useful. I forget who said it. It's not my quote, but there's a great quote. It said, "Stop hanging out with people with whom you share a common past. Start hanging out with people with whom you share a common future." Same goes for the internet. Find out what websites people who have done what you want to do go to. Go there and hang out there. And so cryptocurrency, peer-to-peer lending, these things are really important. You mentioned working harder than most, especially when starting to work for yourself. I have a detailed action plan, made a few investments, and I'm very optimistic about starting to work for myself. Do you have any advice for staying productive, thus ensuring consistent hard work is put forth? I do, in fact. And that is that you cannot manage time. Everyone talks about time management. You have to manage time, attention, and energy all together as a triad. Anyone without the other two don't work. Your energy, figure out your rhythms, these ultradian rhythms of 90 minutes, where you get 90 minutes of productive work, 20 minutes of downtime, 90 minutes of productive work, 20 minutes of downtime. They work. They work for me. Managing sleep so you're not sleep deprived. Managing attention so that you are not sitting at your desk going like, oh, there's so much going on, but focused. So time, attention, and energy is the big one, and you want to focus in on that triad, not one or the other. And otherwise, the other thing is recognize that when you are busting your ass, that eventually there will come a time when you will not have to bust your ass. You might actually have to consciously detangle from that mindset. But it's a lot easier, just like when you have babies and you're not sleeping at all, especially with twins, other parents will be like, it gets better. It gets better. This is a mantra that parents tell to one another. It does get better. Like the sleep issue, you will sleep again. I promise. Just get through it. So yeah, when you are working a full-time job that you don't like, training in another job that job may not be something you particularly love. It's just something with a future, and raising kids, and doing and doing magic, it does get better. It will end. The pressure will ease up, but you have to do it for the time being because what you've done thus far doesn't work. All right. I came to USA with $600 in my pocket, and I've been a professional painter since 2010. Awesome. That is great. Can you please repeat the name of the entity for removing obstacles? I heard Purba, but I don't think that's right. It's Purba, so the Tibetan, Dorje Purba. But again, this is something that requires initiation and training for. But you could call upon Ganesha to overcome obstacles. The whole point of this class is that you don't need a new deity. There is no magic. There's no magic that is more magical. A lot of people are just racing around one thing to the next thing to the next thing at a rate that is incredibly breakneck. One of the things that happens in my Hecate course, which is not something I would recommend if you're financially stuck, okay? So don't think I'm recommending it if you're financially stuck. That would not be something I would recommend. But anyway, one of the things that happens when people get into my Hecate course is I'm kind of like, nope, slow down. You're in here for 7 months, and if you do part 2, you're in here for a year. Stop. Nope. No, you can't do that. No, I don't want you to run around doing that either. Nope, stick to it. Stick to this. Getting people to actually learn something and train in something is very hard if we've been running around I read a book on Orishas. I'm going to do some Orisha magic. Woo! Oh, wow, look at this. It's Kumbanda now. Kumbanda is the huge thing. I'm going to go over and do. And, these things are wonderful. These things are wonderful. I didn't mean to denigrate either one of them by that. But it's the way that people approach them. So don't, Purba is not your answer if you're not already trained in Purba. But, and if you do, then you can look online. There are empowerments, both live and now Garchen Rinpoche gives the Vajrakalaya empowerment from Ratnalingpa online. And then you can start, the process of learning that. Will there be a copy of this recording emailed to us? No, there will not, but there will be a copy of this recording posted to the blog. So it will be free to download not only for you guys, but for anybody that wants it in or out of the course. Next, what about possibly being cursed or medical conditions that have no cure? Okay. Good. So what about possibly being cursed? What about it? You uncross yourself, man. And yeah, there are some difficult, occasionally you run into these very difficult cases where somebody was cursed and then the person that cursed them died and their shade is kind of perpetuating things, but these things are rare and they're overcomeable. You do an uncrossing, and if necessary, you keep uncrossing. For some people, uncrossing is a one-time cure, and for some people, it is a perpetual treatment that they need to keep doing. But you deal with it, and you overcome it, and then you realize that overcoming the crossing still leaves all the problems caused by the crossing in place. And then you start working to rebuild your life again. Medical conditions that have no cure. This is going to sound rough, but these are not problems. And they're not problems because they're not actionable. They're situations, but they're not problems. By that, I don't mean that they don't affect you. Obviously, they do. But you can't do anything about it. If there's a treatment, you get the treatment. If there's no treatment, there's no cure, then you have to figure out what you can do with it. You have to figure out what you can do with it. It's that simple. And that's not very comforting advice, I'm sure. But it's unfortunately the only advice that's real. You have to use your noggin. You have to connect with your people, and maybe you don't have people. You know, it's unfortunate, but there are some situations where you have to use magic to do the best you can. And, you know, if whatever has no cure and is causing you such pain that you cannot work, then, you know, unfortunately you're hopefully getting good disability, and I don't have a magic bullet for you. I'm sorry. Do magic to heal yourself, do magic to give yourself more energy, give magic to give yourself more focus, do magic to get yourself in front of the very best doctors. But in general, there you go. Somebody said no cure according to Western medicine. I mean, yeah, I know, but you know, yes, there are miracle stories of miracle cures, and I've done rituals where I've, you know, healed people in a way that was surprising even to me. But it's the exception, not the rule. So, you know, and always invite, you know, always explore all your options. Likewise, if all, you know, I kind of went and said, you know, please consider mainstream medical advice. But obviously, if all you've considered is mainstream medical advice, then you should also look at alternative therapies. Next up, good advice from Andrew. Rotarians, Toastmasters, Kiwanis Club, Chamber of Commerce events. These are really important ways to network if you're starting a business. And they're also really important ways to get in front of different people who are serious about money, people who are serious about finances. One thing about people who do well financially is that we love to talk about money. We love to talk about it. We love to talk about what we're doing and how. I mean, yes, if we've got some secret business venture that we don't want released ahead of time, then we're not going to talk about that. But in general, you know, the people that that think it's impolite to talk about money are very often the people that don't have any. I'm not saying you want to sit down and that's all you talk about at dinner, but in general, you know, people with money don't mind talking about it, and don't mind helping even. Good starting place for enchanting to improve upon retirement savings. I have a pension set up and a 401k and some savings. I want to find more opportunities. I set up something with the intelligence gathering glyph. Okay, so first of all, let me tell you, it depends entirely upon your age. If you are younger and you are thinking about your retirement savings, first of all, I salute you. Because that's the time to think about it, to get it set up, to take advantage of the compound interest so that it's meaningful. And, you know, the biggest thing is take action and get started. Go to, you know, Price Waterhouse. Go to, I keep wanting to say Vonage, but it's venture. You know, open up a good retirement fund. If you are self-employed, then really, you need to open up a SEP, because you'll save like 1/3 of what you put away. You basically get it right off your taxes in America. There are other solutions that are more actionable. I'm looking down because I'm trying to look up something that I seem to have erased. But there's also some online wealth management groups that people do well. I have some money in with one of them, and earned a good 17%, 18% the year before. So these are really good, better than bonds. In fact, there's some indications Greenspan is worried about a bond blow up. But it's if you're financially stuck, right? Now is not the time to save for retirement. I'm probably one of the few people who would ever say that, because the logic is you always save for retirement. But recently somebody who is severely underemployed, they got their tax return. They're like, where should I invest this? Where should I put this $1,000 away? I said, you should put it in a bank where you can get it in an emergency, because if you've got credit card debt, the interest on that credit card debt is probably higher than the interest that you're going to get back in a savings account. So if you've got credit card debt here that's raising at this rate, and a savings account that's only raising at this rate, it doesn't take a genius to figure out you're losing money. If you don't have any emergency money set up, in which case if you get hit big time, then you will, of course, you'll have a problem. You will start running up credit card debt because you lost your job or something. So if you're financially stuck, now is not the time to throw money into retirement. If, however, you've got a decent job and you're in your 20s, then if you can. When I was in my 20s, I could afford beer, I could afford the video games, I could afford the guitar. I could have afforded to put money away. I would have said I can't, but I could have, and I wish I did. But that would be it. And as far as magical advice, Helios to oversee the gold works for me. That kind of growth. I don't use Jupiter. I for investments, I talk to Baphomet. Salvate, Coagula, that's the market right there. So, there we go. Somebody said this is a little free form. Can you recommend someone who has a similar information but in a structured format? I'm sorry you didn't find it well constructed. I put it together as best as I could, and no, I can't think of anybody. If I knew of anyone who gave the same information in the same form, then I would have not done this and just pointed you there. I don't like doing things that other people have done and talked about a lot. What I will say is that just take a listen and write down the important bits and structure it yourself. This is a thing that drives older people like me bananas. Like, if it's not handed on the internet, if it's not structured in such a way that we like, it's almost like but this book said something I can't use, so fuck the book. It's the same kind of excuse. It's like, yeah, but it wasn't presented in a way that I like, so I'm not going to do anything. So there you go. 25, work as a professional and know my career caps at a pretty low survival wage. I would like to own a home and pay off loan debt. Any advice on how I can spin my artistic magical skills and do something profitable or long term? Okay, so you are an actor, musician, choreographer. First of all, it doesn't cap at low wage. You have to look, you do magic to open roads. When I was young, I hung out with these guys in a band called Lizard Music, and everybody in the band wanted to be, grow up to be a rock star, right? And so one of them did. He's the keyboardist for Wilco. One of them, however, is more or less a studio musician. He does do his own stuff, but he's a studio musician for the most part. He makes a good living doing that. Another one opened up a school for kids, teaching them rock and roll. So, teaching the skills, that is one way to supplement. Taking your skill as, an actor and training people in ritual. These are things that you can do to incorporate magic. You've got to figure out an angle that is different from what other people do and put a price tag on it. Don't consign yourself to pretty low / survival wage at all. Yeah, don't do that. So there you go. Next question I got in: what is an example of doing magic to get more focus? Wow, good question. First of all, I don't believe in calling upon the spirits to get more focus. I don't believe in the focus-giving spirits. It's not that they don't exist. It's not that people don't claim success. Haven't ever worked for me. Haven't ever worked for anyone that I could see in a serious way. So what I recommend are focusing exercises. What I recommend is meditation. What I recommend is training your attention gruelingly for 10 to 20 minutes a day. Horrible to think that something takes this kind of effort, but it does. So yeah, that is the magic to increase focus, man. The magic of structuring, the magic of meditation, and training the mind. That's really it. The magic that shifts your brain from habit to habit. What I have seen of that magic has not impressed me much. So I hate to disappoint, but there we go. Next one, roll over your 401k to a Roth IRA. Good idea. Absolutely. If you're leaving a job, your 401k, your Roth IRA is taxed at the rate that you put it in at, not at the rate when you pull it out. This is important because when you pull it out later in life, then obviously A, there will be more money in there because of interest, and B, you are, the tax rate would probably be higher, or at least that is the thinking. That said, once you start making over, I think it's $147,000 a year, you can't open a Roth IRA anymore unless you use one of those funky backdoor Roth IRA things, and I don't want to get involved in that. But, just something to think about. While you are in financial crisis or getting out of financial crisis, or if you're not in financial crisis, but your income is below the cap, Roth IRAs are a great financial vehicle. Next one, I'm reminded of the advice to make sure to have a source of income that can expand when using magic for more cash to avoid getting cash in the cat's paw ways that are worse than no cash, i.e. insurance settlements, death benefits. Your thoughts? So I think I wrote about this recently in the memorandum. I said, is your life enchantable? Which is why I didn't really cover it here. But yeah, obviously, is your life enchantable? People that have, like me, who own my own business, I do magic to get more money, boom, influx of customers or an idea for a new product, no problem. If you are in a job where you make salary plus commission can increase. If you're in a corporation that is fast moving, where there's some turnover, you can move, you can get promoted into a better spot. If, however, you work for the government, not a lot of flexibility there. If, however, you work for a family, a family business, and you are not a member of the family, may not be a lot of flexibility there. So you have to have, these are ways that where if you are in one of those jobs, creating a secondary income that you can enchant is hugely beneficial, as long as you don't forget to protect your primary job. If you want to keep that day job, you always have to tell the spirit, like, you know, increase my work, you know, get me more money through this side business without losing my regular job, because that has happened. It has happened to me. It has happened to quite a few others. Somebody else recommends Sane Trading. Check out Tasty Trades, beautiful free shows. So I haven't checked it out, but good, probably good advice. What was that you said you invest in when you are self-employed? A SEP, self-employment, or I forget exactly. It's not self-employment. It's something for your employees. But since you're your own employee, it's called a SEP. It's self-employment pension, and you can open one up. And you know, if you put in, you know, like $45,000 one year, you might be saving $7,000 off of your taxes that year. That's not exactly advice for the financially stuck, but it is good advice for the financially self-employed. So a SEP can save you a lot of money in taxes. Somebody thank me. Thank you too. Thank you for coming. Money Master the Game. I don't know it, but I'll check it out. Years ago, I came to the exact place of everything you're speaking of and got very serious, found a book that connected with me, that dealt with both the practical, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but here's the thing. Going back to the book, you may find somebody else that hates that book. A lot of people hate the 4-Hour Workweek. My friend Fabeku really doesn't like it because of some of the ways things are framed in there. But when it hit me at the right time. Tim Ferriss, the author of the 4-Hour Workweek, the book for him that hit him was The Magic of Thinking Big. So I went out and got The Magic of Thinking Big, and I thought it was dumb. It didn't hit me at the right time. You know, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, there's a lot to be said against it. I don't even think Rich Dad is a real person. But it hits people at the right time to reframe their attitude towards money, then it's good. But if you're financially stuck, these are your magic books. Okay, these are your magic books that will get you out. These are the ones, along with the grimoires, that you can take. You know, you can say, Frymost, I want you to go and you apply it to this book. You know, and help me do this thing that I learned about in this book. So you got to just start reading. Bias to action, guys. Bias to action. Get off your ass. Read a book. Don't like it? Get another one. Libraries. Free books. Hey, Overdrive. If you're watching this, you're on a computer or a phone, Overdrive, the app, guess what? It's like Audible, but for free. You can check out digital books from the library. You know, and listen to them. You know, Design Your Life. That's another one. It's not really a financial book, but it gets you to think differently about your life and the problems that you face. So many people who were financially stuck had this magic book come into their life that forced them out of their rut. So that's why I say, if you want the magic you're already doing to work better, start feeding yourself different diet of information. How do we get how do we get ourselves out of our self-sabotaging BS? That's pretty much what the whole talk was about. So, you know, it's a good question, but that is really what the talk is about. Stop doing the same thing over and over and over again. Stop identifying with your problems and start start realizing that you're a person who has problems, not a problematic person. Piece of advice concerning divination in this context. Yeah, always have a question. First of all, have somebody else divine for you when it's something like this, because we all have a tendency to see the best things, right? Get somebody to divine for you that is ruthless, that is like, nope, that's stupid, it's not going to work out. Because this is not fun advice to hear, but so many readers are afraid to give that advice, to read the cards and say, yeah, nope, this isn't going to work out. Yeah, nope, I'm sorry, you're wrong here. Your wife is right, not you. No, I'm not going to agree with you. We are all, so many people are looking to their magic, their spirits, their tradition to affirm what they already know, or to affirm their point of view. You don't need somebody to tell you that you're right. You need somebody to tell you when you're wrong. This is the role of tradition. And ideally, this is the role of divination. So, read ruthlessly, always have a question and interpret it in the context of the question, not as a general sign of good or bad. Beyond that, there are plenty of books. I like Camellia Elias. I like Teresa Reed. There are a lot of books on tarot and other divination systems. In which of your books do you describe your recommended rigorous 20-minute attention focus training? The Sorcerer's Secrets, but it's sit down and shut up, basically. If you just want to know that, let me recommend the 10 Meditation in a New York Minute. Really thin book, great little text on meditation. You don't need a lot to meditate. You don't need to read like 6 books in order to meditate. You can learn to meditate in 5 minutes. You can get an app, Calm, Headspace. I don't like meditating with apps long term, but they're great to learn the skill. I don't like meditating with apps long term because meditation should be a part of you. Meditation should be integrated into your hardwiring. So if it's something that you need an app for, that is related to an app, then it's not becoming part of your mind. But it's a great way to learn. So that's really it. It's not a particular meditation that I teach. But like I said, my method is in the Sorcerer's Secrets. I talk about it elsewhere, but those would be vehicles that break the cost ceiling for the talk. What magic can I do for energy that lasts throughout the day so I can have energy to work? You can sleep, you can eat better, you can exercise. If you go in for the Taoist thing, and I do to a certain degree, you can stop fapping. That drains your jing, which causes a loss of energy and a loss of focus. If you smoke weed habitually, it can be a motivation dampener. I'm not against it. I'm all for legalization efforts, so please don't interpret it that way. But yeah, it can be a motivation zapper. I don't need studies to show me that. I've seen it in people's lives. If it's done too much, again, this is the magic for it. Yeah, I mean, you could do pillars and spheres, which is again in the Sorcerer's Secrets, but that's for creating a specific internal energy that is going to get you a particular type of mental gnosis. Will increase your bodily energy a little bit, but as far as like energy to work, eat right, exercise, sleep, and scheduling. Schedule your day according to your rhythms, and keep in mind, time, energy, and focus. There are a lot of questions. What advice do you have for someone who is recently divorced and pretty much back to zero, lots of credit card debt, alimony? How one who is 44 to start over? I'm a doctor, but was blindsided by divorce after 21 years. What steps would you take to get back on track? Man, first of all, you're a doctor. You didn't say that you lost your practice. So, in this case, I wouldn't call you financially stuck. I would call you, as having a financial. No, actually, you are financially stuck. I take it back. Who the hell am I to say that you're not financially stuck? You are, but the advantage is you have an incredible skill and I hope a decent income. If you don't have a decent income, then you need to find ways to optimize it, either in your own practice or taking on additional work. You're divorced. I don't know if you have young kids, but maybe being divorced frees up more time. On the credit card debt, I am a big believer of killing the credit card debt first, to the point where the first thing I would do is go completely into cash, carry an ATM card and cash, and have one credit card for things you absolutely need a credit card for. Securing a hotel room, renting a car, things like this are best done on a credit card. And then, you dump it into the credit card debt first, every penny you can. If you've already optimized the money that you're making as a doctor at 44 years old, then it and you have optimized your time. So in other words, there's nothing else that you can devote yourself to make extra money, pulling shifts somewhere else or to do something else, teaching, advising, things like this. Then the next thing would be to do the cutting, the cutting of spending, the cutting of essentials, and you live like that broke ass divorce dude in like every show about a broke ass divorce dude, where it's pretty Spartan usually, until you get back on your feet, and then you have then you play the credit card game, then you figure out what credit card is giving you maximum points. You use that to track your spending, and you only use that one, and so on and so forth. But for now, you move to cash. You maximize your income. You minimize your lower. If you have child support payments, I have never, and I refuse to do, to even like consult with people to do magic to avoid child support payments. I do realize that in some cases it is very unfair. There are cases where the mother even makes more than the father does, but the father is getting hammered for an insane amount of child support payments because the father is the role model. So I do realize that this kind of thing happens, and you can do magic to to make that what it is, to make that, to optimize it. And, as for what magic you do, I would do the 2-week planetary challenge for that. You can look that up on the blog for free. I talk about invoking the powers of the planets, where we're, the moon to set timing, to affect people's deep minds, Mercury, movement, Venus, enchantment, sun, and so on. So you can look that up later. But yeah, that's what I would do to get back on track, and realize that you're in a situation a lot of other guys your age are in. It's you feel like you're 44 and you should be at a certain place, and you're not, because this thing happened. But a lot of people are not. So you take some solace in that, and use the magic for those things that I listed. All right. Woo! I'm only going to do a few more. I'm going to end this at 3, so it cuts off at 2 hours. Currently looking to return to university, had to leave for mental health reasons, now have student loan and credit card debt, plan to enchant, but often find myself exhausted or even scared to follow through. Would the meditation to help focus be a key dealing with this? Would you recommend other things too? Okay, so meditation does help, but in general, when it comes to fear, here's the thing. You feel the fear, and you have to acknowledge it. You have to welcome it. You have to say, I feel you. I see you there, fraidy cat. I understand you, and I understand what you're saying. And then you sit down, you make space for it. This making space for your fear automatically starts to take its teeth out of you, right? You've made space for it. It's part of you, but it's just part of you. And you could even talk to it. And then if you're really nutty like I am, you'll use a third person. You'll say, okay, Jason is feeling this fear. And Jason, is afraid that if he does this, the money might make him unhappy. Or if Jason does this and fails, he'll look like an asshole in front of people. Or if Jason reveals this, then people will judge him for it. This is the kind of game that you play. And so by using third person, by externalizing it in the mind, not externalizing it from the mind, but by making space for it and then using third person terminology, you're distancing yourself from that fear, but giving it a place. And then the last thing you do is the premeditatio malorum. What happens if I give in to fear? The premeditation of evils. Well, if I give in to fear and I don't do this and I just keep doing the same thing I've always been doing, then 20 years from now, I'm going to be in the same place. Doesn't that suck worse than failing? And most of the time, the worst case scenario is not what's going to happen. So then you back off from that and say, well, if that's the worst case scenario, and that's not likely, then I'm going to go ahead and do it, And so, you got student loan debt, you got credit card debt, they're bearing down, and it's not fair. Some people started their student loans with one deal and then basically ended up with a whole different deal. And it sucks. It's terrible. But, what is the alternative? What is the alternative? Just doing what you're going to do? Okay, Money Master Game by Tony Robbins. Somebody threw in. I haven't played it yet, but I'm willing to. Somebody said the thing I wrote isn't in the book. If you can please read the rest. I don't know what I missed there. I'll try to. Sorry. Okay. This is the person that found the book, dealt with practical and metaphysical side of wealth. Quickly turned things around, going from hand to mouth to making the best money I've made in my life up to that point. The work was interesting, but I was pretty miserable because of the people I work with. So I gave myself a year, saved up loads, left the job, went into pursuit of more life fulfillment, and got back into poverty. This unfortunately then made me have serious trust issues with myself, on some level existentially, the universe, that pursuing fulfillment put me back in poverty. I worked hard in the past many years to recover from the psychological trap I put myself in, where I started to look at things as lose-lose. Now my headspace is better, but I'm extremely underemployed, and my strongest issue is lack of passion to engage. How do we get ourselves and our own? So this is why, how do we get past our own self-sabotaging BS? Yeah. It can happen. People have this concept there, especially amongst There is a concept amongst people who are financially well off but are doing something that they don't want to do, that they should throw caution to the wind and do something fulfilling. And people will be there left and right, like, don't waste your life at this corporation. Do something that you love. This is your life. What are you doing? And to some extent, that is true. But if we don't take very seriously, how am I going to make money doing this, then it's a trap. It's a trap. So I'm not big into telling people that. So, to conquer the self-sabotaging BS, again, that is what most of this course is about. That is what the meditation is about. That is what the fear process I just gave is about. And the recognition of reality, that going back to the very beginning of the talk, real versus unreal. You can do the thing that most fulfills you. But if you don't have a plan to make that profitable, then you're going to flounder. The sheer force of the universe and magic and going, yes, this is what I've always wanted to do, woo, is not going to do it. It's not going to do it. It never does. It never does. And you will get all kinds of signs that you're on the right path. You'll feel like, oh, this is great. I'm doing what I should be doing. That doesn't mean it's going to be profitable. It doesn't mean it's going to be profitable. You have to take responsibility for that part, not the universe. You told the universe that you wanted to do this and basically take the profitability and cast it to the wind, then that's not factored in. Profitability has to be a close second. I've said that many, many times about business, that serving your customers and doing and excelling at what you do is number one, but money has to be number two. Close number two. All right. I think I have to cut it off at this point. I said here I had a financial sorcery course for businesses and entrepreneurs a while ago. Is it still up and available now in the future? It'll be available in the future. It is, that again, you'll see that popping up in a few months on the blog and in the newsletter. What system do I like for breathwork? I practice Tantra, so I do, Tummo and breathwork that supports Tummo. Other people are focused on Qigong, and there are lots of different systems of Qigong breathing that are great. I have a possibility to spend a few months at someone else's place, not pay rent for a few months, and work on my business. Is that something you'd recommend? Of course it is. Yeah. Especially if you're trying to get back on your feet. Yeah. That is it. I think I got through them all. We're in at about 2 hours. So I wanted to thank everyone for attending the talk. The recording will be up shortly. And so I will talk to you guys later. Thanks.